Call the Town Plan and Zoning Commission meeting of January 24th to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Secretary read the roll, please.
Chairman Aida.
Here.
Commissioner Camillo.
Here.
Commissioner Claffey.
Here.
Commissioner Fox.
Here.
Commissioner Kane.
Here.
Commissioner Sobieski.
Here.
Commissioner Woods.
Here.
Commissioner Batalika. Commissioner Braverman.
Here.
Commissioner Giangray.
All 7 members are here. We will not be sitting an alternate. Approval of the agenda, Mr. Planner.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I recommend moving item 10B, Newington Ridge Preserve, to up under just before zoning enforcement officer report, and that's the only change I recommend.
We have a letter from the planner in front of you on this item, so we want to move it forward. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll move it to. Next item on the agenda is public participation. Anyone wishing to speak at this time is limited to 3 minutes. Come forward, state your name and address for the record. Yes.
I didn't know if you wanted me to come up. I'm representing Newington Ridge Preserve.
We're going to take that up after public participation. Okay. Seeing none, you could come up at this point. We're into the portion where we're moving the Newington Ridge up to in the agenda because we have a letter from the planner and he'll read it into the record, and then you could respond. If you want to come and sit here, state your name and address for the record, and you're representing Newington Ridge.
My name is Cheryl Rocco, and I am the president of the association, and I live at 23 Deming Farm Drive.
Do you want to read that into the record, Mr. Planner?
Are you referring to the email from the developer?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, the town received an email from Michael Massimino at 4:46 this afternoon, and it's addressed to Craig and Michael. I'm writing this email to inform you that I will not be able to attend tonight's planning and zoning meeting. Actually, you know what? I have it here. I'll put it on the monitor. Okay, Craig and Michael, I'm writing this email to inform you that I will not be able to attend tonight's planning and zoning meeting. Although I won't be attending, I would like for you to present this email to the commission. Per our discussion when we last met with the commission, the homeowners association and the developer are generally in agreement with the following points as it relates to the community. 1, sidewalks and gazebo. The homeowners association has contacted me and requested that the proposed sidewalks and gazebo be eliminated from the plan and requested that they don't get constructed. Number 2, streetlights. The homeowners association is seeking an additional streetlight for the community. The developer will install the conduit and base of the streetlight at the developer's expense. 3, binder course. The homeowners association and the developer agree that the binder needs to be removed and replaced before a final coat is installed. The developer will address this at the developer's expense. 4, barrier to the wetland/pond. The homeowners association is concerned about some type of protection or warning to the wetlands area. We are in agreement to have further discussion as to the best resolution to this issue and plan on presenting a plan to the Planning and Zoning Commission at a later date. 5, concern about grading and the excess fill behind Lot 1 and Lot 2. The developer will be mobilizing, subject to the weather, by the end of February to mid-March to address removing the fill and regarding grading behind Lot 1 and 2. This will be at the developer's expense. Subsequent to meeting with the homeowners association, I will be preparing a site plan modification at the developer's expense to address items 1 through 5 above and filing with this commission. I also want to point out that I am obviously aware of individual issues that are still outstanding with some of the homeowners. This relates to their personal residences and is outside the issue of this commission and the homeowners association. Although not relevant to the association, we will be addressing individual obligations starting in the spring. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to contact me. Regards, Michael Massimino, President, Mass Construction, LLC.
In light of that, you want to comment? Because we take it up on this, take up too much of this at this time without him here would be,
My only comment is, this is really great if this were to come to fruition and happen. Past practice has shown it doesn't always come out this way, and the major concerns are the safety of the road and the grading. We have a very, very immediate issue behind lots 1 and 2. When they came in to do the patch job on the asphalt, and they came in and out of behind there, whatever they did has created such a horrific river back there. Lot 1 is getting water in their basement as a result of that. They messed with the grading. I understand that he is planning on dealing with this in the spring, according to this document. I spoke with him this afternoon. He did say that he has had financial trouble and he has gotten funding, which would be great. And I know everybody here wants to hear in good faith that they're going to give him time. Our fear as a community is that we're going to be sitting here. The road is really decomposing now. And I asked him, I said, what's your timeline for the grading in the road? Because I can't have us driving on a road that's unsafe in a year from now. And he's, as you can see, spraying and where, I need to know what to do as far as this commission's responsibility as far as timing goes. I understand that you have a contract with him with this bond. I also understand that the bond has expired and that he has so many years to complete this project. I have no problem with him completing the 6 homes. And just for the record, we're not here for our personal punch lists. We're here for the community property and the safety of the community. So what we would like is some kind of guidance as to when enough is enough, because if we need the bond and we want to say to you, pull the bond because he's not making good on this, what is an appropriate deadline? Because to be honest, I as a homeowner and all the homeowners behind me, we've had promises and we've had timelines that haven't been made. So I would love for this to be true. But because of the experiences that we've had, I guess we don't have good faith that that is going to be true. So I'm sitting here to ask you, when is the line in the sand? Okay, April 15th, if we don't have road, you're going to give us the money? I need to know that. That's what I want. I want something concrete so that we are not facing another winter on this road. And now we have a very immediate, with the rain we just had over the weekend, we have a serious water problem. And I don't even know if anything can be done about it right now.
What do you mean?
The grading that, they went back there and they took dirt and they took to fill in the trenches. They were driving back in, grabbing the dirt, driving out, and they messed with the grade. And now the water is flowing in such a way that it's damaging homes 1 and 2 on the road. So is there something that can be immediately done to correct that? It wasn't happening before he went in and took the dirt.
Mr. Planner, you want to respond or?
Well, we don't have a lot of options with the developer. We've got what I call the nuclear option. We could call the bond and finish the project ourselves, which is the last resort. We don't have a lot of recourses short of that. Now, maybe, and I understand, well, normally one of our recourses is refuse to approve building permits for the additional houses. But I think he's not in a position to be able to build any more houses anyway, because as I understand it, he's lost his license. He's in violation of his wetlands permit. So I think that would be a meaningless threat because he can't build more houses anyway. And I don't know what other what other leverage we have over him other than to call the bond.
So I'm asking you, what date do we call the bond? Do we do that today? Or do we do that in 3 months or 2 months? That's what I'm asking you. I'm asking you that.
You want to,
Mr. Chairman, I think that it would be unfair to have too much of a lengthy conversation on this without the developer here, so we can know what his true feelings are and what he's going to be doing. I would ask the planner to recontact Michael Messina and ask him to ask him when he's going to come into the town planning and zoning with his new site plan and discuss these items 1 through 5. And if he can possibly speed that up so that we can have an idea of what's going on, and then the public can come and we can address all those concerns with the contractor.
any other commissioner comments at this point? Steve, you're in the business. Do you believe there's anything we could do at this point and with the grading immediately for these 2 houses?
I doubt it very much. While it's warmed up a little bit, there was over probably 12 to 14 inches of frost in the ground just prior to this warm-up, so I don't think anything can be done. And from what again, I'm new to this commission, but the little bit that I read on this particular petition, that the developer did do a decent job of trying to meet all the demands of the commission in preparation for winter. And again, we've had from extreme cold just 3-4 weeks ago to 10 below zero to extreme warm. So the ground is definitely moving right now. I see a lot of it out there where grades are changing 3, 4, 5, 6 inches in places. So it's going to take a little while for anything, I believe, to settle back down and frost to come out of the ground. So I don't think there's anything we could do. I mean, I feel for the association. My advice would be, if they don't have that, they probably should get together and hire legal counsel and look at their.
We've already done that.
Okay, then I think that's a good place to go, because again, from being in this business professionally, a road typically won't get paved with its top course until the development is done. I have driven in that cul-de-sac. The base is falling apart. The binder is not holding up. So something's probably going to have to be done, but I don't imagine that's going to be done for a while. I don't know enough about the rest of the ongoings of this particular development, but I don't think you can do anything right now. I think the earliest you could probably do something, unless the weather changes drastically, would be probably early to mid-March.
Well, that's the conversation I had with Michael today, and that's what he said. Because I said we have this problem, and I didn't think that anything could be done today about the problem with the water either, but I'm not an expert. You know, I'm glad, Stephen, that you said that, because if there was something that could be done and then nobody's getting in there to do that, that's a horrible feeling for those homeowners. But if you're hearing, and we can communicate to that to them, that nothing can be done until there is a weather change, and he's saying in this email that he's coming, and he doesn't come, and we sit here before you at the end of March, it's going to be a very different conversation. We're going to say, we want the bond. Is that what I'm saying? Is that what I'm hearing from you? Like, at the end of March, and that's assuming we're not getting a foot of snow in March, we're going to say we want the bond. Is that how this goes?
Commissioner Sobieski.
Yeah, the batch plants typically don't open till around April 15th when they start making bituminous. So that's because
April 15th is a better guideline?
that's when they start making it. Okay, so you're not going to get bituminous made class 1 and class 4 prior to that. They're making coal patch and other things right now. But if you want good bituminous, it's going to be after April 15th. So that's when they used to open. I'm pretty sure they're still within that time frame. So I don't, you're asking a question, and I don't know anybody in this commission can give you an answer right now, as far as the roadway goes.
Well, there's 2 things that are severely impounding our safety. The grading and the water, because, we're having damage to homes, and then the road. And I get the road, and I asked Michael about his timeline, and he said, he's going to get in there as soon as weather permits and put a new binder course. He's not going to put the top coat, and I get that. I wouldn't expect that. And then he plans on pulling permits for the 6 lots. This is the story that we've all continuously heard. So if it's true, I get not having a final top coat when you're going to come in and put 6 houses. But having been through this before, if he's not going to do what he says he's going to do, we as a community are going to expect that money and the town to come in and fix this.
Let me just mention,
Mr. Planner,
so there is
please.
more, to minimize future frustration, there's a long lead time between when this commission decides, yes, enough's enough, and we need to do the work. Because number one, we need to give him 30 days, I think it's 30 days notice before you call the bond. Then once you call the bond, then you need to hire a contractor, and I would recommend going through a bidding process to hire a contractor, and that takes a few weeks. So it's going to be a good 6 to 8 weeks before before your project can really get underway, if you decide to take over the project.
Commissioner Woods, please.
I think the commissioner is being very optimistic. If you decided to call the bond, I think it would take a lot longer because the developer is going to fight it. The best thing, honestly, for you to be able to do is try to work with him and get him to do everything.
Well, we are, but, and this is, and trust me, everybody's best solution is that this be happening, what you just read. But in preparation of it not happening,
Well, we can't.
We wanna know
We can't
the
take the
system.
assumption that he's not going to do it, because although you might have, and the association has these bad experiences with the developer, the little bit that we got involved with the developer, we told him to do certain things, and he did it in 2 days. So we don't have that experience. We got to take him for his word. If he doesn't do these, keep to some kind of timeline, we'll be back and we'll be looking at the bond. But we got to look at the timelines too. We got to give him the opportunity to do the work. You got to remember that he's got how many lots? 5 lots left to
yes,
build on?
six
lots.
unsold. Yeah.
I doubt that he's going to be pulling permits on speculation houses for 5 lots when he's in this financial situation that he is now. I'm sure that he's building for pre-sales, not for speculation. So for him, this project could go on for another, him not building those houses could take 2 years, 3 years, I don't know.
And you know what, if it goes on for 10 years, I personally don't care. I care about the road. I
Okay,
can't
so
have the road for 10
You
years.
understand that he probably won't put the finish coat until everything is done.
No, but even a new binder course would be
Yeah.
significantly safer than what's happening now.
Commissioner Woods.
Is it a cash bond? It's
Yes.
a cash bond that he has. In the dollar amount?
196,000.
There's sufficient money there. The association has gotten prices for doing the road over, and it's a lot less than that. Commissioner Claffey.
I had a question, if, Mr. Minor, remember, it was 1 meeting ago or 2 meetings ago, we had our engineer in here, or the hired engineer?
Town engineer.
Town engineer. And everyone talks about pulling the binder course. How in-depth are we getting after that? I mean, the binder course is what, 5 inches?
No.
It's 2 inches.
No.
2 inches?
2 inches.
Okay. So
They would grind.
what then under that, how,
Well, actually, that would then be the opportunity to make sure that he put down the 8 inches of process that was supposed to, or actually the previous developer, he bought this project.
Yes.
He didn't
Okay,
build the road
that's
himself.
what-
So that would be our chance to see if the process is even adequate.
What would probably happen is they would take a grinding machine, they would grind the whole road. He would, before he regraded the road, he would check several different locations, and town staff would make sure that the base was the proper depth. Then he would finish grade it, and then he put the proper 2 inches of base in. What was put down there was extremely thin. I don't think the road is unsafe right now. I've driven the road, but I can understand your frustration, and I can understand that we can't go a long time
with the way it is now. I understand that.
Well, when we sat here in November with you guys, you said to us, I promise you, you won't do next winter with that binder course. And I'm going to hold you to that.
Yep.
Next winter
we need to
is
get
not, you know, I can go as long, but
and
we
the-
can't do another winter.
And first thing in the spring is not the best time to
And that's
do a road
fine.
course. So
That's fine.
So we need to get the contractor in here as soon as possible so that we can have this conversation with him and find out what his timeline. Hopefully he comes back and proposes some things and he gets rolling. Because, you know, it's only best for the contractor to work with you and to work with the town. Otherwise, he's not going to be a very successful contractor over in that area. So,
We're aware of that.
yep. Thank you.
Thank you.
You got somebody else that wants to talk?
My name is Janet Chernikoff, and I live at 4 Deming Farm Drive. Chairman, as far as you saying that the builder's done everything you asked him to do, I tend to disagree. According to the TPZ minutes from January 10th, it was noted by Commissioner Woods that Commissioner Payne's email stated that the contractor did everything the commission asked him to do prior to the winter setting in. At the December 14th meeting, there were serious concerns about the drainage behind Lot 1 and 2 and the asphalt patches. The commissioners requested a site visit with the developer to remedy these faults prior to any additional cold weather. Did that happen?
The cold weather came in real fast, and there was only a short window there, and they missed the window of getting a meeting, and so that's why nothing got done over there in the back of those two houses there.
Okay, so at this December 14th meeting, the grading issues behind lots 1 and 2 were deemed to be a dangerous situation by Commissioner Sobieski and a source of severe drainage problems where the first house could have massive flooding by Commissioner Payne. These issues need to be addressed as soon as possible. We can't wait until March. Lot 1 already has water in their basement, which they never had prior to this last visit with the builder. And my question is, what are we supposed to do with that?
First thing in the spring, the contractor needs to take all the excess dirt out of there. So when the contractor comes in and talks to us, that's going to be one of the items that we're going to address with him. First thing in the spring, he needs to haul all that dirt out of there so he can properly grade behind those two houses so that the water will flow away from the houses to help eliminate any water going into the basements. But that's got to be done first thing in the spring. You can't do it until after the thaw and it's a little dry.
Okay, so after the spring, meaning April 1st, April 30th, do we have to pray every time it rains that we don't get water?
We can have more detail for you when we get the contractor in here and we ask him those questions. We'll put a timeline on some of these real important issues so that you guys feel a little bit more comfortable.
Okay, because I don't feel comfortable now.
Well, if the other commissioners agree, we could probably put a few timelines on a couple of the things that are very important. And we will address those as soon as the planner can get the contractor in here so we can have a nice conversation with him, okay?
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Oh, there is one other thing. As far as the drainage, and this only because it interferes with the wetlands, the water that's flowing now down the hill from Lot 1 behind my house and Lot 2 is going into the storm drain. Just the rain on Tuesday, it was worse before. The water goes around, I can pass this around. It goes around the storm drain. I don't know if the storm drain isn't functioning or isn't adequate, but now the water and some of the dirt is going straight down into the wetlands. I was told the reason for the storm drain was to prevent that from happening. So I just thought I'd mention that. You may want to discuss that with him.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is zoning enforcement officer's report.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, good idea.
We have an application for a temporary sign, the applicant is here, so I figure we just can do that now, so they don't have to wait. Craig's gonna pull up the, application.
Want to talk on?
She's gonna come.
Oh, she's coming. Okay.
This is the operator.
Okay.
Good night. My name is Tana Shea Francis, representative of Saz Jamaican Restaurant at 2095 Berlin Turnpike.
You just tell us basically what you're here for and what you propose. Or do you
We
want the
have-
zoning enforcement officer to do that?
Okay. We have applied for a temporary sign to place on our building face. Currently, we have
Application.
there's no sign on the building front, and we have one road sign. What we're looking to put up is a coming soon banner. I believe you have the dimensions. It's 2.5 feet high by 12 feet wide, and also one cold air inflatable. I did notice one thing on the application when I checked the box. It is 18 feet high, not 10 feet. It is a little bit bigger, but I think it is still within the parameters allowed. And that's what we're looking to display.
And that's the third page. If you scroll to the bottom, I mean, it just shows. Do we have any?
Give us an idea of the timeline, when you want to put them up, when they're coming down, when you're opening. Give us some timeline so we have an
Okay.
understanding.
We're looking to put up the coming soon banner as soon as possible. So as soon as we get the approval, we're aiming to open mid-February. So probably the beginning of the third week of February. I don't have the date exactly. So as soon as we open, at that time the banner will then come down, and then we'll also be looking to do a permanent sign during that space of time.
I don't know.
Okay. You have a drawing or a picture of the inflatable?
Yeah, it's there, isn't it? Right there you go.
No, it's one of those inflatables, okay.
How big is the sign again? The banner? Is it
What'd you say?
2.5 by 12 feet? Okay.
What's
There-
the address again?
It's the fire,
It's the on fire, right?
Yeah.
on fire
There is a
grill.
sign on the pole there, isn't there? You're going to be changing that?
Yes, we'll be changing that once we get our permanent signage done. Yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Zoning Enforcement Officer, all of this falls and it meets the regulation as written.
Yeah, it's roughly 30 square feet. The building has got 85 feet of frontage. When we met and went over this, because we weren't sure when it would come before the commission, you guys are allowed to approve 25 days for the banner, so she is going to use the 25 days following the approval rather than specify the dates and not knowing when it was going to be before you. So we discussed that as being appropriate. And we'll work with her to get the permanent signage changed out so that she's got something. I think she's already working with the contractor, so we're going to go over that. I've given her all the information. So this will just be, you may have 25 days, you may have less between now and when their target open date is, so it should work just fine.
And how long will the inflatable be up?
It'll be up for the same time as the banner. So as the banner is up and when we get our permanent sign changed out, both the banner and the inflatable will come down.
Okay, so the maximum is 25 days.
She has to come back here if she wants to go for another segment of 25.
Right.
And I believe we discussed that the banner's going to be on the building. It's not going to be on the ground or
Right.
anything, so.
Where is the inflatable going to be?
The inflatable will be in front of the building, pretty much on the sidewalk as you enter the doorway, waving next to the banner.
Okay. You can't put the inflatable in the state right away. So you
Right.
have to set it back.
Exactly.
And where you're saying close to the building is
On the sidewalk.
on the
On the
sidewalk
sidewalk, yes.
that's adequate, yes. Any commissioner remarks? Commissioner Claffey?
So this is going up prior to opening, anyone moving in during construction? I'm kind of confused at that.
Yes, we're currently in the building during renovations, minor renovations like painting. So we just want to have the sign up to inform the public that, this restaurant will be coming soon. So we are currently in renovation process. Once we get our permanent signage in ready to open, then it will come down.
Any other commissioner remarks? Commissioner Woods?
Just happy to see that somebody's moving into that space, and I wish you the best of luck.
Oh, thank you very much.
Commissioner Claffey?
So, Mike, approved tonight, it has 25 days. It can get, that's for concurrent for both the banner and the inflatable. So within the next 25, after the 25-day period, that comes down, or restaurant opens, or the applicant comes back in.
And ask for more time.
I'm just,
And we
as
get
this is
it.
the first one coming through under the new.
Yeah, you
the
guys can
newer
do 50
regulation.
days per year for a banner, but they can only be given in 25-day increments. So she'd have to come back if she didn't take it down.
And we can negotiate the time that it stays up.
I just want to make sure we're all
Say
thinking that.
say she's there and she needs another 10 days, and she come in and said, I'm not going to open for another 2 weeks. We'd say, we'll probably say, we'll keep it up another 2 weeks. But we wouldn't say you could keep it up for 25 days, because she's telling us when she opens that she'll have the signs down and she'll have a permanent sign.
Understand?
Anyone else? How did you want to proceed, Mr. Planner?
Well, I think this is the first one we've had, so maybe, well,
want-
did you approve the, oh, that's right, the, Stu Leonard's. Was there a motion to approve that one? That would
Yes.
probably be a good way to do it, yeah. so
Can we do it
wanna
at
make a
this
motion.
time and move it out?
I think that would be fine.
Okay. Make a motion, Mr. Vice Chairman.
You want to make a motion to approve it now?
Yes.
Okay. There is no number or anything, right, on this?
Correct.
No. I make a motion that we approve the temporary signage for 25-day period for the Jamaican restaurant,
2095. Right there.
2995 Berlin Turnpike, for a 12-foot, for a 2.5 by 12-foot banner on the building, and an inflatable that must be on the sidewalk, close to the building, anchored down, and in a safe location.
Motion
Second.
made, second. Any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You're all set.
Thank you.
And remember, if you need a little longer time, just come back in. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple of other things, obviously, middle of the month, so I don't have a report, that'll be next meeting. We had discussed a couple of properties in town that had A-frame signs, and so I did a sweep of town, basically hit every road that had a commercial corridor. Came up with around 25 properties that were displaying sandwich boards, so we sent notice to them, basically gave them the information about the temporary sign regulation again, let them know that if they chose to go forward with an application, they would need to remove the sign until it was approved. But it appears that there are between 20 and 25 businesses in town that probably could get approval through the commission, meaning the sign size and potential location would work. They just have to go through the process. So basically gave them try to get a little fire underneath them to come in and apply, and then if not, we'll deal with it like we would any other violation. So those went out this week, and I gave them a few days to get in touch with me, so hopefully at next meeting we'll have some folks here for you. The other thing that had come up earlier in the week that I guess we're looking for a little bit of clarification on is now hiring signs and how the commission wants to treat them. We've kind of looked at it both ways as far, do they fall under temporary signs? Do we want to treat them as we would a violation and address them that way? Or do we not treat them that way and sort of consider them to be outside the parameters of the temporary sign regulation that we recently adopted in September?
Mr. Planner, you have said in the past that there's rulings and court case rulings that you can't regulate content of a sign. So in this case, we would be trying to special circumstances for the content of what the sign said. Does that ring a bell?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And if we deem, or if the commission, not we, if the commission deems these help wanted signs as the types of signs that you regulate, then you would have to regulate them the same way. I think what the CEO is looking for is a ruling from the commission that you deem them not to be temporary signs. There's something different. They may look like a temporary sign, but they're not. They're something different. They're help wanted signs.
Yeah,
And
but you're
it was
right,
never-
you're making that interpretation based on the wording of the sign, and we're not supposed to take into consideration the content of the sign.
Okay, if the commission wants,
I mean, that's what my opinion. We'll ask the commissioners for their interpretation of it.
This
Commissioner
would be the
Woods.
same as a realty sign then, right? That's how you're looking at it? Because we don't
no,
regulate.
we regulate realty signs differently.
Oh, I didn't think you did. Like,
It's a gray area.
okay.
But we do have a regulation for temporary signs. They have to be a certain size, they have to be a certain distance from the.
I read
from the
all that
business.
today.
Right. And the staff's understanding was that help wanted signs that might look like temporary signs are under the radar. They're not, the commission doesn't want to regulate them because if someone wanted to put up a help wanted sign, they'd have to come in, get on the agenda, make a presentation, go through the process that we just went through. It would only be good for however many days a temporary sign
And
is
the
good for.
problem with not having them come in and thing is that they're putting they're putting those right out on the street line. They're putting them in the right of way. There's no control over the location of where they're putting them. I see most of those help wanted signs are not even on their own property. They're on the right of way. And that's why we went with the regulation that requires them to come in so that we could get a site plan that pinpoints the exact location of the sign. Commissioner Fox?
So, Mr. Chairman, straighten me out a little bit here. So if somebody, some small shop in town needs a machinist, he's going to have to come here to us to be able to put a help wanted sign out? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's the way the regulations read, Mr. Fox. That all of you commissioners approve.
I have a few minutes to digest that.
Okay, Commissioner Woods?
Unless they already have a permit for a sign and a reader board on it, then they wouldn't, right? Because you can't
Right.
regulate content. So, like our business, we have that.
Yeah.
We never use it for that, for oncoming sales. But if I wanted to put now hiring, I could do that, right?
Yeah,
So,
you have
and I think a lot of the
change, right.
manufacturers do that. They're already hanging them on their own signs.
A
So
good
I-
example is the old cable tool on Richard
Yeah.
Street. They have
I
a
was just
permanent
thinking of that
sign that has changeable letters, and they change, they're looking for a certain type of a machinist or something.
I-
Commissioner Claffey?
No.
You got more?
Just agree.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know how you're going to get them to come in, and I think we're just going to make a lot more work for our zoning enforcement officer. I understand the intent and trying to get some sort of uniformity and conformity to it, but I mean, lots of times they're probably going to be out there for a day or two, and then they hire somebody. So, you actually want them to come to the commission, is how I understand it. correct?
That's the sign regulation that this commission approved. What you read, if you read the temporary sign regulations today, you see exactly what this commission approved. And it took 3 years for them to come to that conclusion that this is what they wanted. And it was in collaboration with the business community. Most of those recommendations came from them.
Yeah, but it hasn't worked out so well, though, has it?
Yeah, no, it hasn't. Commissioner Claffey.
Some of these now hiring temporary signs are the size of that TV right there. They're double the size of our regulation on temporary signs. And when you add that to the street view, or not even, some of these signs are, as the chairman said, aren't even on the same property that the business is operating on. My concern is the amount that I see that are over the regulated size if you were to come get a permit. So it's advertising their business, has their name on it, and if you get close enough to it, you can read that they're hiring, machinists. It's mainly some of these machine shops. I haven't seen it in the restaurants or convenience stores. But my big concern is the ones I have seen are double, if not triple the size of our regulation just on temporary signs. They're big.
If you went by the sign regulation that we have, even if we allowed the zoning enforcement officer to do this without them coming into the commission, they'd still have to meet that part of the regulation, which would be a sandwich sign 5 feet from the door. So I think that if you want to make this kind of a change and allow them to do that, you need a text amendment. Need amendment to the sign regulations that we just approved and make a special section for help wanted signs. Because you gotta come a way around the legalities here. Commissioner Woods.
Mr. Chairman, through you to Mike, out of the 50, are those counting hiring signs?
50,
Out of the 50 violations?
there's only one.
Oh no,
Right now.
roughly, there were like 25.
That
Not of
were,
hiring.
No, I didn't,
No,
those
yeah.
aren't included in it, those are just business
I'm
signs.
trying to get, how many did you come across?
Yeah, to be honest, because this just came up and I've heard opinions either way, that's why we're talking, I'm not even on my radar because it's something that we haven't really seen a definitive, policy either way.
My question really just trying to understand how widespread it was.
There was one that came up that was addressed to him, and maybe there's one other one. I haven't seen that many of them. Most of the time, there's better methods of looking for employees than putting a sign by the curb of the road.
I would agree with you.
What happened to the case that you had? Was that the sign that Commissioner Claffey, in that one was way beyond the scope of what they would be allowed anyway because of the size, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that one is fairly large. I don't know how.
It was
exactly how
it was
big
in
is.
the right of way, wasn't it? Or,
Yeah, it was close to the
but that
curb.
wouldn't have been. That's an example of what you'd have to deal with. That wouldn't even, if it came to the commission, it wouldn't meet any of the criteria of the sign regulation as it's written today. If the commission would like to discuss it further, we could put it on the agenda, and if you would like to make a text amendment to allow it, then commissioners can ask that be done. But we just did the sign regulation a couple of months ago. Commissioner Sobieski.
I'd like to put it on the agenda because I really don't want to handicap the businesses. If we're trying to get businesses to stay in town and bring more businesses in, we don't want to see not user-friendly. So I'd like to see that on there and maybe make something for help wanted for not more than 10 days, we'll say, or something like that.
Okay, you understand that it means opening up this regulation again?
I fully understand that, but, we're talking just a few places that advertise, and, I think we should give the businesses a break. That's all I'm asking.
The businesses could come in and just put it next to their doorways too. We're not saying that they can't put a sign for now hiring. It's just got to be in a different location and got to be the right size.
Has to meet the regulations.
When we talked about the sign regulations, we talked about separating something, but the legality of it is we can't regulate the content. So that's why when we were talking about the sign regulations, it had to apply to everything because of the legality of it. And so I don't see bringing it up and trying to separate it. I don't think we would be able to conform with the law there.
It's just my opinion. That's all I'm saying.
Any other commissioner comments? Commissioner Woods, anything else? I mean,
I have a lot of comments, but I want to talk to the plan. I need to understand the regulations better, and I'm trying to wrap my arms around, again, back to the for sale signs or for lease signs. Those don't seem to be within 5 feet of the building. They're obviously closer to the road. So are they regulated different than your temporary signs, if they're considered a temporary sign? So they are, and so they are allowed in that space.
Not in the right of ways, though.
No, I realize that, not in the right of way. Not in the state or the town right of way. Yeah. Okay.
any other commissioner comments? If a commissioner would like to propose a text amendment, there'd be, that's your prerogative to ask for that. But you'd have to come up with the language. How would that work, Mr.
Well,
Planner?
what I can do is I can put this on the next issue, the next meeting, town planner report, and throw out some suggestions. And we can do it that way. Stay informal for now.
Any objections to that?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr.
Oh,
What? Say, but
so you're
Gonna open it up for
Well, for the time, I think,
regulations.
well, for the time being, anyone that wants to put up a help wanted sign will have to go through the temp sign process. until.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd
it's still
be-
regulated as a
Yeah.
regular temporary sign.
Right, that's what the staff heard you folks say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
We just gave Mike some more work.
I would be surprised or curious to see how many actually you see or people asking the question about these temporary signs for help wanted.
I mean, I
Or
can
if
do-
you see a slew of them, I don't see them when I drive around.
I mean, I can do it, I can kind of do a little inventory to see what we're dealing with. Are we dealing with 2, or are we dealing with 20? If you want that for the next meeting, I can try to identify, where, I know there are businesses that have the permanent signs. I mean, I can try to provide some info for the next meeting, so you have an idea of what kind of impact this may have.
Okay, because if you're talking about one instance, then I wouldn't want to open up the regulations, start making special circumstances for content on different signs, which we know is illegal. Okay, anything else, Mr.?
That's all I have.
Any questions for the zoning enforcement officer?
I just want to thank him for addressing a lot of those signs. Thank you.
Any other questions for him at this point? No? Okay, any commissioner remarks at this point?
Thank you.
Tobias?
Yes, Mr. Planner, refresh my memory, please. We had done a walkthrough to try to get some state money for the bikeway we were trying to put through. Remember when we had that? And the reason why I'm asking is because I was at the CROG meeting, and there's another state grant out there where CROG is asking these towns to become more bicycle pedestrian friendly. So I want to know, I think you said that ours was rejected, is that correct?
Well, it was, CROG was applying for a federal grant, a Tiger grant, which is an acronym, and I forget what it stands for. But it was a federal grant to do a lot of transit-related improvements in the whole CROG area, including money to extend the north terminus of the multipurpose trail in the junction up through West Hartford to connect to another existing bikeway in West Hartford and then on to everywhere. That grant was rejected, and I think CROG even reapplied the following year, and I think that was rejected also. And that's the last I've heard of any efforts to get funding for that.
The one I was referring to is both myself and Councilwoman Bedrejko were on that. And that was where the state was, we walked through the center of town here, and we looked at narrowing,
okay. Yes.
necking down some of the wider intersections, removing the crosswalks back farther to make the pedestrian travel between curb to curb shorter time, so you get more green time and stuff. That's the one I'm asking.
Oh, that one, yes, right. That's DOT's Community Connectivity Program.
Right.
Yes, and Newington applied for a grant about 6 months ago to make some bike improvements to Garfield, and we haven't heard about that, so I'll give DOT a call, or CROG or someone tomorrow, to find out what the status of that grant application is. But you're saying that there's been another round of funding announced?
There's another round to have towns look at it again.
Okay.
So what I'm asking is, I guess because that was totally different, if I remember correctly, there was some deals with Constance Lee where they actually necked down the intersection of Cedar now and Constance Lee when it gets finished.
Yeah, there were dozens of suggestions in that final report.
And that's what I was wondering because I know that there was going to be some money made available to maybe put a bikeway through the center, using existing without widening roads, but just striping on the side or signage.
Right.
And that's what I was wondering is where that stood, because I thought that we had a pretty positive rapport with them, and I thought we were going to get something out of that.
Right. All right, I'll look into see whether there's been another funding announcement that we could apply for. I'll look into that.
Thank you.
And this would only be for the center of town, Stan?
No, it would be a connectivity of between the Churchill Park area and along some of the back roads and the walkway and stuff, and it would be able to you'd be able to get to the center of town. One of the recommendations, which we told them would not work, would be to make Market Square one-way eastbound, which we said that won't work. But the other one was to come down Garfield, use the crosswalk here by the Dominic Mezzacoli Way, and go back down through that trail, which will allow the access to almost the whole entire north end of Newington that way. And the The other issue, like I said, was trying to turn Market Square one-way eastbound, and we didn't think they would put diagonal parking in there.
Interesting.
If you remember that, that was,
No, I put that before my time, I guess.
no, that was at the same meeting. The
Oh,
girl from the DOT
community-
there had suggested, I forgot what her name was now.
Okay, no, I wasn't aware of that suggestion. That's interesting. Wonder how the merchants would feel about that, making the Market Square one way. I guess we'll find out.
Well, that was out there, and if you remember correctly, they also discussed on Cedar Street by moving the sidewalk closer to the cemetery fence line to give the greenway, the
Right.
3-foot forgiveness space, so to speak, between the traffic, so that the wind of the traffic going by would not blow people's hats off and stuff like that. Remember that part of it? Okay, thank you.
If I remember right, I thought that you were against this type of an activity because the streets were too narrow. And I remember specifically talking about
Right. No,
certain
this-
areas that
Right.
where this doesn't work. So
Right.
how do you make a system with only partial completion of it? So someone can't even get to the bike access areas without going through an area that's not accessible.
The idea was to put them on low-volume roads, not Main Street, not Cedar Street, but on low-volume roads like Walsh Avenue, for instance, down along, Dowd, which is somewhat, somewhat busy, but not that bad, through Fisk, down into that area, would give them access down into there. The only area they would have an issue with is going over on Willard Avenue over to the bikeway. That would have to use the sidewalk or walk it up. But as far as widening the state highways, no. As far as widening roads, no. So it would be kind of like they're doing right now, but it would just be a defined pathway. I'm not in favor of putting bikes on busy roads because of the state law that says you have to have 3 feet between the edge of the bike and the side of a vehicle.
Any other commissioner remarks at this time? Next item is public hearing. We'll have the secretary read the procedure for a public hearing.
The order of proceedings at a public hearing shall be as follows. A, convening by a chairman. B, reading of the notice by the commission secretary or a commissioner designated by the chairman to act in his stead. C, identification and location of the property involved by the town planner. D, the statement of the issue to be considered by the chairman or the town planner. E, presentation by the applicant limited to 20 minutes unless a specific extension is granted by the chair. F, persons wishing to speak in favor of the application limited to 2 minutes per person. G, persons wishing to speak in opposition of the application limited to 3 minutes per person. H, rebuttal by the applicant limited to 5 minutes total. I, rebuttal by the opposition limited to 5 minutes total. During a public hearing, it shall be within the discretion of the chairman whether the time limitations shall be varied slightly, provided the commission consents to any such variance. In no case shall an extension be for more than 20% of the allotment indicated above, or 1 minute, whichever is greater.
You read petition 3417, the public hearing.
Petition 34-17, special permit, section 3.4.4, home occupation at 172 Indian Hill Road, Amy Berube, 172 Indian Hill Road, Newington, Connecticut, applicant, owner, contact, continued from January 10th, 2018.
This was an application that we've heard. This will be the third meeting that we've had on this public hearing. And we kept it open because we wanted the information for the from the commercial kennel regulations from the state of Connecticut, which you all have gotten and hopefully have read. Is the applicant here? Want to come forward, state your name and address for the record, and is there anything new that you would like to put on the record?
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, Robin Pearson for the applicant, and with me is Ms. Berube, the applicant. As I understand it, you left the hearing open to take a look at the state regs, and to give the commissioners the opportunity to review the following items and to discuss them at the public hearing. So you have them. We're curious whether there are any questions or comments to which you would like us to respond. I know we have explained to you before, what we thought were important points with regard to those regulations. We indicated to you at your having had your request that we go back and check with the state that indeed a pet facility license would be required. I think at that time I indicated to you that while I don't believe that the dog sitting operation that Ms. Berube is pursuing comes within the definition of a kennel or a commercial kennel for the state nonetheless has indicated to her that they will regulate what she does inside her home, primarily to protect the dogs and make sure everything is above board and the dogs are healthy and vaccinations are in place and other requirements are met. So we represented last time that should the home occupation be approved, and I also mentioned to you that it's a prerequisite to get zoning approval before being able to even apply at the state level for the license, that she would proceed to secure such a license. I think I've also said over the course of the hearings, and just want to remind you, frankly, what the state has to say in terms of the requirements for their regulations are separate and distinct from what you look at when in Newington an applicant comes before you for local zoning approval. The state regulations apply only to the state licenses. They do not presume to have jurisdiction over your permitting in any way. The state does not have any jurisdiction over your zoning review. And importantly, the definitions and any requirements that are in the state regulations that would be determined to be relevant to her operation should she pursue that license, they're only applicable to the state licensing process. They are not applicable to your local regulation. And I know you have seemed to indicate that because the state would consider this a commercial license for the purpose of the pet facility license that she needs, or a commercial kennel operation for the purpose of that pet facility license, that in effect means that it would be a commercial kennel as you have it treated in your regulations. And that's simply not the case. Two separately entirely different proceedings and regulations. Had your regulations said that commercial kennels, as defined by the state regulation at section blankety blank, those are the only commercial kennel operations or dog facilities in Newington that are allowed, and that definition applies, that's a different story. But your regulations don't do that. You do not have a definition for kennel. The only thing you do have is a regulation that says if you are operating a commercial kennel, it has to be attendant to, or attached to, or part of, or accessory to a veterinary facility. What you do have is a regulation that allows a home occupation that would accommodate the use that Ms. Berube has been undertaking in her home. She did not apply to you for a commercial kennel. She applied to this body to secure permission to be able to operate a dog sitting facility with no more than 5 dogs. And the staff report does say 4, but we applied for, she has 4 and sometimes there's an overlap for 5. I just want to make sure the record's clear. As she has been doing within her house, in her home, a totally different situation, and we believe in the same way that your regulations under home occupation would allow, for instance, for a daycare facility of under 6 children in a home. This is very similar. And I know some of you have said, well, dogs are not children, but I think you also have you know, I don't know, 26 people who got up here and said to you, we care about our dogs in the same way as people might care about their children. They're part of our family, and there's no difference, in fact, when you think about the way the facility would be set up and used between the two operations. So again, she didn't apply for a commercial kennel. She understands a commercial kennel as something different in terms of it has to be affiliated with a veterinary clinic. She's here under your regulations, which accommodate and would accommodate a dog sitting operation within her house. And she has been conducting it. She should have come to you first. She did not. But she has been conducting it in her home. It's a tried and true facility. There are no complaints in terms of noise violations or issues that have been registered with the town. And you have heard from any number of neighbors, except for one, who has said that they welcome her, they enjoy having her there. It's not a problem. It does not upset the community. And for all those reasons, we think it would be appropriate for you to be able to approve this home occupation. Now, I know that Amy would like to just conclude with that, with a few words of her own, and I'd like to hand the mic over for her to do that.
I'm going to be short in what I want to say here tonight, because I think too much time has been dedicated to this simple application already. My time, yours, and many members of the public who have come out in support for 3 nights of public hearings. First, I am not a commercial kennel. I am a professional in-home dog sitter. I belong to a professional pet sitting association, hold liability insurance, and follow a strict code of ethics. I pay taxes quarterly on my income, including the outrageous self-employment tax. Most sitters like me, which are in the thousands nationwide, hundreds in Connecticut, and at least a dozen right here in Newington, many of whom are following and watching these proceedings, usually take in 4 to 5 guest dogs, compared to a commercial kennel at 40 to 50 dogs, and sometimes much more. While I understand the concern for regulation at the state level to protect dogs, I don't think it's fair to box me into a definition with regulations that were set up more than 30 years ago. I'm sure these old restrictions were designed to target the inhumane treatment of animals and people running commercial businesses and underground kennels. I doubt they were intended to punish local pet sitters who didn't even exist at the time. The state of Connecticut, like all states, needs to get up to speed with the wants and needs of pet owners in 2018, just like they had to do with the wants and needs of Uber and Lyft customers. Perhaps my job now should be to petition the state for a license specific to in-home dog sitting. Your only job, as I understand it, is to consider my application based on the town of Newington's ordinances. I'm not sure how 4 months of going back and forth about what the state thinks I am has happened or why it is even relevant for this application. The same question was brought up and discussed at length in the October 11th, 2017 TPZ meeting, where frustratingly, my statement wasn't even read or considered. In my opinion, it was at this point when the commission should have reviewed state information, not 2 hearings later. Second, I am a stay-at-home mom. This is by far the most important job I have right now. I wish communities would see the value in having a parent be able to work from home and help them. That is why supporting responsible home occupation businesses is a good thing. It lets me stay home and be there for my family and others, and I don't mean just my clients. Not only am I here for every single sick day, snow day, delay, half day, early release, but I'm also here for the neighborhood kids as well. I've had at least 3 of the teenagers in my neighborhood end up on my doorstep after locking themselves out of their homes. My neighborhood is the proverbial village, Most of us enjoy one another, watch out for one another, help one another, and genuinely like being neighbors. My neighbors, but for one, came out in strong support of my application. And even there, I can assure you that any client dogs who bark are quickly brought inside. Regardless of what you decide tonight, a month from now, when these hearings are done and over with, my yard and home will still be used by dogs who will romp and play in it the way they do today. There will be no noticeable difference to my anonymous complainer because I have the right to own as many dogs as I like here in Newington. Having dogs in a residential neighborhood environment is expected by most reasonable people, and you know no complaints have been filed against me in the years I've sat for other people's dogs. So if you choose to deny my application, all you will be doing is putting one unreasonable person's wants over many, many others' needs. Mine, my kids, these dogs, and their owners. Thank you.
So before you close the hearing, we would certainly again ask that you provide us with an opportunity to answer any unanswered questions that you have. And I would like to just put something else on the table as a possibility. I don't think it is possible to underscore how important this ability to continue dog sitting for other persons' family pets in her home is for Amy Berube and also for those who depend on her. Early on, I think it was at the December 14th meeting, there was a suggestion that perhaps a better way of handling this, a potentially better approach, might be to create a new regulation that would, I would guess what you would want would be a special permit regulation that would allow dog sitting in homes specifically. I would put this proposition on the table for your consideration, and that is that we would be willing to extend this matter out. We have enough time remaining to keep the hearing open until the first meeting in March.
Mm-hmm.
And work with your staff to see if an regulation could be drafted that would be amenable to this commission.
What would we probably, I don't want to interrupt you, but what we would probably be looking at, what your suggestion, what I'm hearing is a text amendment, and if that would be the case, it would be a text amendment to the commercial kennel regulation that exists today. Because I think that would be the place for it, not under a home occupation.
Or, if I might suggest instead, if some special permit authorization for dog sitting, which would allow it. I'm not quite understanding how you would amend a commercial kennel operation and still be able to allow it in a residential zone then.
That is something that you'd have to figure out as part of the amendment, part of the process.
All right, well, we're up for the challenge.
We're almost forced into that because of the application at the state. The state is, you say there is no differentiation between the state, what the state does and what we do.
No, I'm saying there is entire differentiation. One is the state and one is local.
Yes.
You are not controlled by the state regulation.
I understand that, but the state is controlled by us because if we don't sign that permit saying that you have zoning permission, you can't get the commercial kennel license. So it would be good if you're going to go that route to have it in sync with the state and the town, and it makes it a nice, neat package if you could get an amendment through the commission. I mean, it would be, I would suggest that would be the place to put it. Under the kennels, maybe you change the whole, Mr. Planner, help me here a little bit.
Well, we don't have a section on commercial kennels. We
do.
No, we refer to them obliquely. We say that you can only have a kennel.
Okay, well, that would be the place where you would say commercial kennels, then you'd have.
But I think that's only in the industrial zone, or there's some other. Well, I think your point. I think the applicant understands your point, and then she'll work on
Mr.
coming up with an amendment that you would be amenable to.
Mr. Payne?
Yep. There's two places where the commercial kennel is addressed in our regulations. And one is 3.15.1, which is special permits allowed in a BBT business Berlin Turnpike zone, where it says veterinarian hospitals and kennels, but only when the kennel is operated as an accessory to the veterinarian hospital. It's also listed in section 3.16.1E, uses permitted in industrial zones, where it says veterinarian hospitals and kennels when operated as an accessory to the veterinarian hospital. And if you go back farther to like the other zones, it's never mentioned. So when a commercial kennel comes in, those are the two places that we have it in right now. Now, nothing says that can't be modified.
And there could be a subsection to the kennel that refers specifically to dog sitting. You'd have to define it. I mean, there's some work to do here, but there's a way to do it. Through your own admission, what Amy just said, Ms. Berube just said in her statement, this doesn't just affect her. There's probably 20, like you said, there's probably 25, 30 other people that are doing the same thing. Unfortunately, or fortunately, or unfortunately, they didn't get caught yet, or there haven't been any complaints yet. This application was complaint-driven. It wasn't the zoning enforcement officer happened to drive by and see some dogs, or a commissioner called, happened to say that there was a problem here. It was complaint-driven, and that's where he took the action that he had to take.
We're still not aware of where that complaint came from, but
I don't know. The zoning enforcement officer's not here, but it was obvious that he was the one that brought it to our attention that this was a problem, or this was a complaint. It just didn't appear here.
I've been doing this for many, many years. I'm up for the challenge.
Okay.
We do not want to be in a situation where this business cannot keep going. And I know Amy is feeling frustrated and disappointed and concerned that it will not be approved. So we're just trying to, at this point, find any way to allow her business to continue, to try and resolve this in a way that is going to make you comfortable, because a denial is going to be just devastating for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have told her I would work on this, I'll work with the staff to come up with something. We would propose to continue we'll grant an extension through as far as we can to extend the public hearing. In the meantime, we will try, and as I've looked at your schedule, if we can move quickly, we could actually have an application in for receipt at your February 14th meeting, Valentine's Day. It's a good omen. And then perhaps the hearing could be scheduled for February 28th. And there could even be time for a continued hearing if that has to happen on March 14th. And that would be, the extension would go through to that March 14th meeting. I don't believe this town works through subcommittees, so I don't know if that's possible. But we would just work through with Mr. Minor and staff to see if we can draft something.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Payne has a
Question for the
or
town
concern.
planner. Wouldn't a proper procedure be to start a whole new application for this, because there'll be a whole new public hearing, and maybe just withdraw without prejudice on this one, and then she works with town staff to propose the new text amendments, and then it would be a whole new public hearing. It wouldn't be a continuation of this, would it?
Right. I think the simplest way to pursue that would be for the commission to, in effect, agree to stay the enforcement action until the applicants have the opportunity to run the course of proposing a text amendment.
If I may, we can accommodate your interests and our interests if
We just want to make sure that we're doing it legally.
the correct way, and I'll tell you the correct way to do it. So we could continue the hearing until March 14th. You have time to do that. At that point, on March 14th, the hearing would have to be closed because the times for extensions would have run out. And then you have 65 days to make a decision.
Right.
So that would all be on hold. There's no need to withdraw. If the commission still feels uncomfortable with it approving an amended regulation, there will be nothing for us to apply under. But if you do approve a regulation amendment that allows some other vehicle, we can still, with plenty of time, because all of this does not run out until May 23rd, we can still file an application with you under a new regulation, should you adopt one. You may not, but should you adopt one, we can apply under it. This proceeding right now would just be set aside, and you will not have decided it. There'll be a whole new proceeding under our proposed regulation, and we would apply under that regulation. And if that all comes to pass, you don't even have to decide this one. It can be withdrawn. But if that doesn't come to pass, this application would then be decided by you, yea or nay, and we take whatever next steps are necessary.
Mr. Planner, does that sound like?
Yeah, excuse me, I'd have to double check the dates, but the concept,
Could work with you on dates.
excuse me, but I think the concept is sound.
Any commissioner comments on this? Commissioner Woods?
And the reason that we're going to do all this is because of the way the state is asking them to license it under a commercial kennel. Because if we approve this, or deny it, let's say we approve this as it is right now, we're just allowing them to go to the next step to the state. Doesn't mean that she's going to be able to do what she wants to do
Correct.
if the state doesn't issue her a license.
But it's also saying that she's allowed to have a commercial kennel in her residential zone.
No,
That's what, yes, it is. Yeah, that's what it's saying.
Yeah, see, if I may, this is where I disagree. I'm a landscaping contractor, yet by the state of Connecticut, I hold a remodeler's license because they don't have any place to put me. Yet I have to hold a license. I need to be licensed by the state of Connecticut. My license is home remodeling. I don't do any home remodeling, yet I have a license in my pocket and one on my wall at my place of employment. So I think the state doesn't have a category for Mrs. Berube business, unfortunately. They're throwing her under the kennel. She's not a kennel. She's a full-time dog sitting business.
Mr. Peng?
Yeah. Full-time dog sitting business, which also boards the dogs at night. And we got an opinion from the planner that said that anything that was boarding was basically a kennel. And if you notice on the state of Connecticut license application, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 boxes. You could be a pet shop, you could be a grooming facility, you could be a mobile unit, a commercial kennel, a training facility, or an animal shelter. Those are the things that you can be. So you know, you can't, this just doesn't fall under the home occupation, I don't think. If we let the zoning enforcement officer sign off on this, then that means other people could also have a commercial kennel in a residential zone. We'd be starting a precedence. When I look at the regulations, I say to myself, okay, well, it was just pet sitting at first, and I was almost saying, well, maybe that's not so bad. But then they got into the boarding, and I say, well, if it's boarding, then you become a kennel. So I say to myself, where in our regulations? Because after all, Commissioner, you got to admit that we have to follow our regulations, okay? And I say to myself, well, where does it fall? And I go back and I check some things, and I look at 1.2.1, and it says uses not stated are not permitted. So that's a big thing. It's a reference. So I look through the regulations. I look for anything that has to do with dogs. And the only place I can find it is 3.15.1 and 3.16.1E. Those are the only two places that I can see in our regulations that deal with the care of dogs.
Mr. Quid?
I don't agree with your analysis. I respect it, but I don't believe this is a commercial kennel. I don't believe it ever was intended to be a kennel, and I don't think it fits that definition. And I think if we pass this, and you are correct, then the state won't give Ms. Berube a license. And this, in fact, we've done nothing. All we've done, we've given her permission to operate there, as I would see it, as a dog sitting business. And if she goes to apply to the state for a kennel license and they say, no, you need to be a commercial kennel, and she's more than likely not going to meet those guidelines because it's in her home.
Yeah, but they're not taking into consideration the commercial or residential or any of that. That's where we're supposed to take into consideration. That's our role. And when you look at our regulations, it calls it a commercial kennel can only be in a certain zones, not in a residence zone. If this was the only case and the only one that would ever come up, we're setting a precedent for all the other sitting, and we're also opening up for home occupations that are service type operations, where the regulations was set up for home occupations to basically be professional offices. Not a good example would be that if a guy that does auto repair work could, under the circumstances, come in and bring one car at a time into his garage and work on a car in his garage and fall under a home occupation, which we don't allow. It's regulated by the state in the same way that this is. We're opening ourselves up for different types of service operations where the intent of the home occupation was specifically for professional offices or professional operations, yes.
Mr. Chairman, if the only issue is the overnight stay of the dog, then maybe we should just bar that part of it. All right, we're only looking at basically during the day then. I believe Ms. Berube said she has occasionally, it's not all the time. You know, I have a dog, and when we go away, before I found a dog sitter, I would board the dog in a kennel, okay? Mm-hmm. Now, that's the only difference I'm having a problem with here, and I hope please understand me, that we're not dealing with a lot of dogs overnight, you know, and the caged area, for you read the state regulations, you need a caged area, you need all this other stuff to define as a kennel. Just my opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I just may respond to that. If you read the definition of a kennel under the state regulation, we don't meet it. A kennel on that section that controls commercial kennels is a kennel. First of all, it says definitions as used in this chapter, not as used in the zoning regulations in Newington, but as used in the chapter regarding commercial kennels and pet facilities. A kennel means one pack or collection of dogs which are kept under one ownership at a single location and are bred for show, sport, or sale. Again, they're kept in one ownership at a single location. These dogs are owned by other people. They're not owned by Amy. And they are bred for show, sport, or sale. None of that is what's taking place in Amy's house.
Mr. Chairman?
A commercial kennel under this regulation, only with regard to the state, not with regard to Newington, because you don't have a regulation that defines either kennel or commercial kennel. It is a kennel. So first and foremost, to be a commercial kennel under the state regulation, you need to be a kennel, which means you have to own the dogs and breed them for sale and so on and so forth. And you maintain that particular kennel for boarding or grooming dogs or cats, and includes but is not limited to any veterinary hospital which boards or grooms dogs or cats for non-medical purposes. So the only instance in which a commercial kennel is something other than owned by, a place that all the dogs in the kennel are under particular single ownership, is when it's part of also a veterinary hospital. That's with regard to the state, and the state told us We don't care. The only place we can find to put you in under this, to protect the dogs and to make sure everything is okay in these dog sitting operations, is to throw you into the category of commercial kennel. They don't believe she's a commercial kennel as you envision a commercial kennel. They just are looking for a way to regulate people like Amy, who are in the same thing as Commissioner Woods just told you about his situation. That's a perfect comparison. Going back to, and I understand where you're coming from, Commissioner Payne, but that's not the way the law works. When you when the state says you first have to have zoning approval, the zoning approval is to be able to operate what she's doing.
Okay,
And
so
we're telling
let's
you,
look at that. Let's look at what you just said. You need zoning approval. And you're trying to come under a section of the regulation, which I contended from the beginning, that is not the right place for it to go.
it's a
Because
home occupation.
Okay, then can you meet all the requirements of it? Are you using 25% of this floor space, not the whole house? Are you going to make sure that not let the dogs outside because you have to contain it within the structure? Can you meet those requirements? Could we put those kind of restrictions on an approval?
I mentioned to you that if you you have discretion to interpret your regulations in a way that makes sense. If
And
all
where did you fit, the only place that you looked and you said, okay, we have a dog sitting operation. We're contending that it's not a commercial kennel. Where in the regulations does it say that? There's no place that even mentions a dog sitting. So you refer back to 1.2.1 that says that uses not stated are not permitted. That's what I have to look at as a commissioner. I have to say, well, there's no place. If you're saying that's not a commercial kennel, then it's not listed in the regulations, then I got to go back to that statement, which was in the first section of the regulations, in bold letters, uses not stated are not permitted.
Yes, but home occupations are uses, all kinds of uses that are not laid out specifically in your home occupation regulation. You talk about professional uses.
Yeah, but to do that, you need a volume as thick as the Bible. Because
exactly. And that's why
you'd have to state all the things that you can do and that you can't do. But the regulations are pretty clear as to the intent of what a home occupation is.
Let me just, again, the home occupation, what she does there is perfect, a perfect home occupation. She can do it while she's got her daughter in the house, she's got her own dogs, she doesn't have to go out to work. It can be handled inconspicuously, quietly, professionally, within her home, with no impact on the neighborhood. I grant you, the one area that gives us potential concern is that it's not conducted entirely within the dwelling. However, what I said to you was, I think you'd be hard-pressed. A doctor's business is not conducted entirely within the dwelling. People come up and they park on the facility, staff comes in. I assure you that somebody at some point in any of those professional uses goes outside and has their lunches, or smokes a cigarette, or just goes to take a walk during the day, or goes out for lunch and comes back. I mean, and daycare is the classic. Daycare for 6 and fewer children is a home occupation use that's accommodated within your regulations.
Which is accommodated within the regulations. This is not.
No, as a home occupation for 6 or fewer is a home occupation.
Okay, we could debate this forever. Are you proposing to come in with a text regulation that we just discussed?
And the only reason we're doing that is because we're afraid we don't have the number of votes to be able to get the home occupation approved. And as I said, that would be devastating. So while I don't think it's necessary, we are willing to work with you if there's a way of devising a regulation that will allow Ms. Berube to do what she's doing now, because you don't feel comfortable doing it under a home occupation. We will go through that effort. We will do that. And we will come in and we'll bring a regulation, working with staff, to you. And if you can adopt it and we can apply and get approved under it, we'll do that instead, if that is a more acceptable route for us to handle this, because we want to make this happen.
Commissioner
Yeah,
remarks?
Mr. Chairman. I think the applicant has to make that decision on her own. This is not for us to recommend that. I mean, you have that right to do that. But to continue this debating back and forth, I think is inappropriate because the hearing hasn't been closed, and it's out of the norm. But the applicant has the right to come in and propose any text amendment. You're basically trying to get the best of both worlds because you're going to come in with propose an application, leave your application open as long as possible, and then if the text amendment doesn't work, then you're going to ask for a vote on this application. Is that correct?
Yes, that's exactly what we're proposing.
Any other commissioner comments on that? Commissioner Woods?
At this point, I think that's the recommendation you should make right now. I don't think the votes are here.
So, for us to, what we would ask then is that after you continue, we would ask that you continue the hearing, and we would give you a written consent to continue the hearing, and then we would proceed expeditiously. We're not trying to extend this any longer than it needs to be. We're just trying to find a way to make it work and make everybody comfortable with it.
Mr. Planner?
Okay, so the understanding is you'll keep the hearing open for at least one more meeting, at which time you'll submit a possible amendment?
We're going to, yes, and
Okay.
I will leave you with this letter that we've already prepared, dated today, to consent that the public hearing in the above noted matter be continued to March 14th, and to consent to an extension of the time in which to close the public hearing to March 14th. That
Okay.
falls within the allowable timeline for doing that. And in the meantime, we will proceed, and before March 14th, we will have something into you. In fact, we're going to target for the February 14th.
We'd prefer that it come in as a special exception.
So-
right?
Well, it's going to come in as another document submitted as part of their current application.
No, it would be a totally separate, totally different proceeding.
Okay.
Totally separate. Yeah.
Totally separate.
Just leave
Oh,
this
yeah.
one open.
Yeah.
It's not part of this proceeding.
No,
It would
it's
be a
just-
totally separate
yeah,
proceeding.
if they
May
do-
I ask one thing, and do you have a waiver provision for the regulation filing fee? Because it's $550 for us to file a request to amend the regulations.
And
Unless it's either.
you've already paid the fee for this?
Yes, we have.
Mr. Planner, can you?
We don't have a process, but over the years, I've come to you on a case-by-case basis and recommended either granting the waiver or not granting the waiver.
Sorry.
So you've done it in the past.
How much was this permit?
$220.
That's plenty. I would recommend to this commission that we waive the fee for the application because I think it's in conjunction,
Thank you.
not totally legally in conjunction with this application, but it's, I think that,
Move we waive this particular fee?
Second.
any questions, any comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr.
So
Chairman?
was there a vote on the request to extend, or
To keep
have
the
you
hearing open?
extended? Hearing?
Do we keep this hearing open, or do we close this, and then she gets so many days from the closing, and, because if you keep this open, it's been open.
No, she already gave us, she
Right,
gave us,
gave us the
she
extension.
gave us a waiver of her right to,
Well, not to get too wonky, but what's the problem with closing the hearing tonight, but the commission delays act?
Wait for the new building.
From your point of view, what's the difference between the commission closing the hearing tonight, but not acting on it for as long as?
You
we
only
can
get
kick it down the street?
65 days.
Right.
And I'm afraid that in considering how long it took to get to this point, that we will run out of time.
Okay.
Because we need to get a regulation adopted, and then we have to file an application under the new regulation.
give her as much
Which
time
can
as-
be
Give her as
accommodated.
much time as she needs.
Thank you.
Right, okay, good.
Is that acceptable to the commission, that we give her as much time as she's required?
Yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Fox.
And can I assume that it's the commission's wish that Amy continues operating her?
Well, that's been the procedure that we followed from the beginning, so she can continue to operate until there's a conclusion, either a vote on this particular application or a text amendment to the regulations that allows certain things to happen in a residential zone under the dog sitting provisions.
Thank you. I think that's the most we could hope for. We appreciate that, and we'll get to work.
Okay, that's where I was hoping that it would have come from the beginning. It was a text amendment. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That ends the public portion of the agenda. We'll give a couple of minutes. I'm sorry. That does not end the public. We have part of the public, part of our proceedings is that the public can put input.
Oh, that's right.
So, and I'm sorry that I rushed this.
That's right. The hearing's still open.
This hearing is still open. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of it, if there's new information, we've heard you before. If there's any new information you'd like to put forward to the commission, please come forward and state your name and address for the record.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. Having sat through the discussions about this application since October, I just want to say I find it appalling that it has taken this long, and that I find out tonight that it's on an anonymous complaint. I know it may be okay for somebody to do such a thing, but I find it cowardly for someone not to put their name to the complaint. And it just disturbs me no end. I go around town just like you do, and I see a lot of things that are being done that shouldn't be done. There's signs for selling eggs. There's all kinds of stuff. There's people on Facebook talking about chickens running around. To put this woman through what you've put her through is disgusting, in my opinion.
Well, that's your opinion, Rose. Anyone else?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Erica Thurman at 105 Gilbert Road. I'm here in town. And first of you, I would like to thank you on behalf of Amy, who is my friend, for hearing her case. And as witnessing and being here since October, it is really discouraging for someone who's getting ready to retire from active duty, looking to establish my own business, a home occupation business here. And I feel that some parties are started out negative and against it from the get-go. And that is really, really discouraging. And I feel as though our first meeting in October, I'm not sure if it was you, Chairman, but someone said that you were here to make the decisions for the better Newington, and this here betters Newington. There are so many people here who supports it, and her whole community loves her. She is awesome, and her business is awesome. She is very professional, and she takes it seriously. It is so disheartening for it to be swept under the rug and for her to be categorized as a kennel when that is not what she is. And I understand the whole regulation bit of it, and I'm not as educated as her wonderful attorney here, but I just want to say I concur with what she said. It is very disheartening, and I just think it is terrible based off of one complaint, who the person wouldn't even establish who they are, and then you have the whole town standing behind her. A number of us have came out several times, and you know what? I'll be here in February, I'll be here in March, hell, I'll be here in December if it's required. So thank you so much, and I do apologize for my swear.
Anyone else? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application that hasn't already spoken? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward, state your name and address. Are you speaking in opposition? Is that what you said? Yeah. Diane?
All of you people.
Hang on a second. Are you speaking in opposition or in favor?
In favor.
Okay, well,
Diana Sarah, 237 Reservoir Road. I was here at the last meeting. The meeting before that, I was at home watching. I've been upstairs at Board of Ed, came downstairs for this tonight to hear about regulations of home business. And you're speaking about in-home daycare, using 25% of the property. It doesn't state that the children can never go outside. If any home business of a daycare is at home, those kids are outside playing in the yard, screaming, playing ball, doing whatever. If it's a
That's not
dog,
what this application is for.
if it's about a
daycare,
dog,
Diane.
they can go outside also. They have to go outside to use the bathroom, okay? They're not gonna go in the house and do it. There's nothing wrong with this business. Newington is about growth and progress, but it's not just for the town, it's for the people who live in this town. And what she's doing is growth and progress for this town. And you should pass this.
Anyone else in favor?
So it is. Exactly.
Hello, my name is Curtis Costanzo. Amy is my daughter. I live at 103 Apple Tree Crossing in Berlin. And if you're looking for new information, this lady that's about to speak has already spoken twice. She shouldn't be allowed up here. Thank you.
Anyone that wishes to speak in favor of this application can. It would be prudent for time-wise for this commission if you didn't come, if the people didn't come. If you would like to repeat what was said over the last 3 meetings, be my guest. You're all willing to speak, but we'll be here till 1 o'clock in the morning. Does this woman have the right to speak in opposition? Yes, she does. As many times as she wants? Yes, she does. And she has the right for rebuttal. I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know exactly who made the complaint. Maybe the zoning officer knows.
No, I don't think he does, because it came through a second party, so I don't think he knows the name of the person who actually made the complaint.
Okay, well.
And that's not abnormal, is it, Mr. Planner?
No.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else wishing to speak in favor of the application? Anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward, state your name for the record, please.
Suzanne Paveluk, and yes, I have been up here twice before. So I just have a couple of general questions that I don't expect answers to tonight that I'd like to just propose to, the TPZ committee. Who is going to monitor this if it does go through?
Zoning enforcement officer.
Well, I don't have a lot of hope in that because, as I said at my first statement, I was one of the original complainers twice with the dog warden, and nothing was done. And this business has continued to operate illegally for 3 or 4 years. So there is no follow-up, and I'm not comfortable in that. Everyone behind me with the daggers digging through my back because they don't live at 346 Robbins Avenue. Their property does not abut the barking back dog yard. These people are talking, they live on this road and that road. People are coming and bringing their dogs from Cheshire and this town and that town. Has this commission even taken a look at what other towns are doing? Just to give yourself a chance in, are you doing the right thing? Are you doing the wrong thing? Did they have this proposed to them many years ago? And did they deny it because of neighbors and people? Everyone's pulling in the front of her house and no one's seeing what's happening in the back. My other concern is health issues. In one of the statements the attorney made, she said, Miss Berube is taking the dog poop and flushing it down the toilet. Is that really the intent of an 1,100 square foot residential home in Newington, to be using the MDC sewer system to flush down dog poop for 7 dogs? How many times a day?
Please,
I don't expect
let her
answers.
talk and say what she has to say without any comments from the audience. You had the opportunity to speak and no one interrupted you. So let her speak. Let her say what she has to say. She has the same rights that you do. Please continue.
I'm just bringing these things out to the table. I think that If it happens, I don't believe it's going to be controlled. And I just want the town, not this committee, either the police department or the dog warden, to be prepared for multiple phone calls when I'm trying to enjoy the pleasure of my home that I pay taxes for and have for 25 years in the town of Newington. Thank you for your time.
Welcome. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to address a couple of those questions, if it's okay.
Yeah.
He said that the zoning enforcement officer would be the officer to report to, and it would be through this committee. He would report to this committee, and this committee would keep a close eye on it. So I think the enforcement to move forward would be all right. As far as what other towns do, naturally, when a new text is proposed, that's something that the commission usually does some research. And take some of that information in consideration when a new text is proposed.
Thank you.
Okay? And you're absolutely correct. The health, safety, and welfare is a very important thing that we have to watch out for in our regulations. I just want to state, too, that, you know, we have regulations that we have to follow. And it seems that a lot of the people in the audience think that we could just vote on our heart, and we really can't. We're not the Environmental Quality Commission. We have a book of regulations here, and we're sometimes, our hands are tied because we have to follow these regulations, and that's why we proposed the applicant to come in for a text amendment. Whether or not she's successful, that's a whole nother story. I hope that answers your questions.
It does.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Hang on just a second. We have a procedure to follow. What is the next thing? The rebuttal by the, there's a rebuttal by the applicant. If you would like to rebut what she said, you could come up after she rebuts and rebut her statements.
No, and if I may, Robin Pearson, at this time, we have no rebuttal. The
Okay.
hearing will stay open, and, you know, if
Okay.
there's anything that needs to be said, we can say it at the close of the hearing.
Okay. You have anything else to add?
No, I'm all set. Thank you
Okay,
for your
thank you
time.
very much.
Thank you.
That ends the public portion. You heard what the proceedings are going to be, that we're going to keep it open, and we'll proceed that way.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Are you going to entertain this young lady who has something to say?
Yeah, yeah, I'll let her speak. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Paula Kupchik. I own the Groomers in Newington. I think this is two separate issues, but when you think about it, it does come to one. Why can't you guys work with the Department of Agriculture to come up with some kind of solution for the zoning and this type of business and meet in the middle? There's going to be a lot of businesses around this area. This isn't going to be the first one. Yeah?
Well,
It's good.
Yeah, by the attorney that presented is saying that there's a separation between what we do and what the state does.
There is a separation, but can't you guys work somewhere to get right into the middle of it?
If you would like to take 20 years for it to go through the state, then we would do it that way. You're complaining about the amount of time that's taken to go through this commission. If you want us to get into a situation where we're dealing with the state of Connecticut, then be prepared for a long, drawn-out thing. I don't believe that the applicant or your attorney would consider that a wise thing to do at this time. This hearing is continued. Next item on the agenda is room clear. Things go by their own admission. There's 25, 30 other places that do the same thing that they're opening up rooms with. And then this woman wants to, because she has a grooming thing, she wants to.
That's probably over. Oh, the new bus barn, you see it? It's cool. It's underground. It's a great facility. Perfect security late at night. The cops sitting there every night.
The next item on the agenda is TPZ minutes of January 10th.
Make a motion to accept.
Motion made and accepted. Any corrections or additions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any new business other than,
No other new business.
we're under old business petition 3617. You want to explain why that's on the agenda still?
Right, this was that freestanding sign on Costello for the Global Granite property. Been on the agenda for a while. I'm sorry, I did not prepare a draft motion for approval, but I didn't see any issues with it, so I have no objection to the commission approving it. The plans are in the packet if anybody wants to look at that.
Actually, you have a draft.
Or did I? Because
yeah,
I'm looking through mine, I can't find it.
No, I think it's in
thought
last
I had
month's.
prepared one.
This sign.
I thought at the last meeting that we,
It was part of the.
I did?
we were going to.
Okay, good.
I thought at the last meeting
There's
we
one in one of
were
the
taking
packets,
this
I
up.
saw
There's something about that.
Okay, you guys, when you're finished, I'll talk. Go ahead, Mr. Woods.
No, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Fox, got something to add?
Well, yeah, you were just saying something. I thought we
At the
voted on
last
the
meeting, I
draft
thought we were going to take this up in the spring when he did the road improvements, and we would look at the sign.
Yeah.
Yes, I spoke to him about that, and he asked that in fact it be taken up tonight because, or at least more promptly, because there's no reason to delay it. But if the commission doesn't.
He agreed.
Right, and I spoke to him the next
The
day.
reason to delay it is that we're going to put this, if he puts up the sign at this point, he doesn't have the road widths and the road conditions that would support people going and using that as an entrance.
Okay, so you'd rather table it until
Not
later?
that we'd rather, it's only,
Okay.
how would you be able to do that?
Well, there are a couple ways to do it, but if the commission would prefer to
I know, the
not act on it
commission
for
want to
now.
act, it's up to the commission.
Unless he's asking for like a temporary, these are where my deliveries go sign.
Oh, okay, fine.
I mean, he agreed to it. He's the one who asked for it.
Yes. So let's move it on to a future meeting. Okay. So then, that was the old business item.
Newington Reserve, you're going to keep that on the agenda?
Yeah, we talked about that earlier tonight.
Right.
Right, and then, okay, then that brings us down to the town planners report.
No petitions for public scheduling?
None. They haven't gotten any.
Okay, you want to do the planners report?
Yeah. So, that's, I think the next one.
I have a stupid question.
Yeah.
Have they updated it where if we bring this up online, we can click it? Because last time, Mike was saying that since the system's new, we can't go into it.
I don't know what he
Still
meant by
locked
that.
out,
It has always worked if you know how to work it, and it's a little bit complicated.
Okay.
So at the end of the meeting, what I'll do is I'll do a little tutorial for everybody because it's not at all intuitive by any means. I don't blame you for feeling locked out, but
I asked that before, and he said, well, there's a new system, I don't know yet. Okay.
I think he was talking about his own system,
Okay.
but we
I
can talk
hear
about that later.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so in my report, I just mentioned that the budget for the commission has been submitted. I met with manager about it, and she didn't have any objections since it's pretty much the same as previous year. So my understanding that it will be in her actual recommendation. And then we talked earlier today about A-frame signs. And the staff has gotten your direction on how you want us to proceed on that. And then I told the manager or the chairman I would talk about the tree or the sign on the tree at 167 Lewis Street. And it's only a couple paragraphs, so if the chairman wants, I'll just read it, or not.
No, you could read it into the record.
Yeah, okay. So, the sign on the tree at 167 Lewis Street. The sign attached to the tree at 167 Lewis Street has become controversial, so here are the facts. The building at 167 Lewis Street is set way back from the street due to the wetlands in front, and it's difficult to see from the street. The owner of the auto repair business used to have a sign informing delivery vehicles of where he is, but it was on a freestanding sign on the neighboring property, and the new owner of the neighboring property recently removed it. The owner asked the Conservation Commission for permission to install his own freestanding sign, but was denied. He therefore decided to attach a sign to the existing mature tree in the front yard, i.e. on private property, but not in the right-of-way. He applied for a building permit, which is the proper procedure for all signs. The application was reviewed by the ZEO, which is also the normal procedure for all building permits. The size of the sign is within the amount of signage allowable for this building, and there's nothing in the zoning regulations to prohibit a sign attached to a tree, so he approved it. At the time, the ZEO did not know that this tree is in a conservation easement area. The Conservation Commission, which is the town agency that has jurisdiction over conservation easements, subsequently became aware of the sign and determined that it is a violation of the conservation easement, since signs are on the list of things that are prohibited in the easement area without prior approval by the Conservation Commission. They would probably be within their authority to order the removal of the sign if they wish to. And then I just presented a map here, let me make it a little bit smaller, of the area in question. Oh, but then I'll read my last paragraph. So unrelated to this incident, the ZEO has revised the building permit application review process in December to include information about floodplains, wetlands, and conservation easement areas. In the future, a similar application would not be approved. So the slip up because the conservation easement area has been addressed. So this is from the town's website. That's good question. The cross-hatched area is the conservation easement area. The smaller blue area underneath is the actual wetlands. And then, of course, there's the 100-foot upland review area around that. So, and I think this was the area where he had asked to put a sign, but the Conservation Commission denied it. So that's the situation. The staff's position is that this does not meet the definition of freestanding business sign because it's not on a standard, it's on a tree.
What is the definition of a standard?
Well, we don't have a definition, and I looked in my zoning definition book, and it doesn't define standard, but I believe standard means a pole of some sort.
In that, so you took the position that a tree was a standard.
Is not a standard.
Then what is it?
What is a tree?
No, then how can you give them a permission to use the tree as a standard when you're saying it's not a standard, when the regulations say that it has to be on a standard or a freestanding?
The definition of freestanding business sign is a sign that's on a standard, and because this sign is not on a standard, it's not a freestanding business sign.
And then what is it?
It's a sign. It's a sign.
It's just a sign?
It's a sign that happens to be attached to the tree. It could have been attached to the building if the owner had wanted to. It's within his allowance for signage.
Okay, I'll open it up to the commission because I don't get it. But,
so if someone attaches a sign to a telephone pole,
can't.
Which is wood.
You can't because the telephone pole doesn't belong to an individual.
Let's say it's on private property. You have telephone poles on private property.
Yeah.
There's many along Fen Road because of the houses that are way up in the back hill by Route 9. So if someone if it was a...
Well, actually, that's a good question. I think that would probably, if that individual applied for a sign permit and he wanted to put it on a privately owned utility pole on his property, I think the ZEO would say, now you've created a freestanding
directory.
Business sign because it's attached to a standard. It's a utility pole, but that would be a standard.
But the tree is not a standard.
No, a tree is something living. It's been there for 100 years. It wasn't installed. It's not an item. It's an item. It's not a structure.
Watch out, Rose. They might hang something off of you as a sign.
Just keep moving.
I don't know, Commissioner, I've never seen this before. I've seen it maybe in, they might do this in Louisiana and the bayous, but I've never seen this anywhere around here. I've never seen it in the town of Newington. It's the first time that I've seen a sign hanging off a tree like this. It's kind of hokey. The sign isn't the best in the world either, but I'll open it up to commissioners what they their opinion. Commissioner Fox. Do you have an opinion on this? Do you think that we should set a precedent to allow people to use a tree? I might have a tree in one of my properties, commercial property, and I could go there tomorrow and hang a sign from it.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't expect people to go around putting signs on trees all over the place, especially being a former chairman of the Environmental Quality Commission. But we need to. Our goal is to, as has been said in the past hearing, growth and progress. Good for business.
They have a sign on the building that specifies where their building is. This is the same situation where you have people that he knew when he was renting the facility that the facility was set back away from the road. So he had.
Well, he had a sign at that time.
Illegally placed on someone else's property.
Now, when he bought the property, there was a kind of a common sign here that provided advertising for several businesses, and that sign, although it's not compliant with your regs, the previous TPC did approve it.
Would that sign be legal because it's not on his property?
Exactly, but your predecessor approved it. So let's not dwell on that because it doesn't reflect well on anybody. But he did have signage here when he bought the property, but then when another company bought 189, that new company kicked him off.
Okay, so it's null and void.
He kicked him off. So then he came to the wetlands for permission for his own sign, but wetlands said no.
And
I'm just saying that when he bought the property, he had a sign.
And they said no because it's in the review area.
When he rented
No, they took it away from him because they didn't want it.
Hang on, let
Conflicted with
Mr.
their
Fox
vision.
finish.
So basically, the only place this repair shop owner can put a sign is on his building or in front of his building or in the parking lot in the area, and nobody can see it. So I don't like a sign on a tree, but what's he supposed to do?
What's he supposed to do?
The sign back there would not be doing him any good.
He's been there for how many years? 12 years?
A long time.
A long time.
been there a long time.
And now if it becomes a situation,
I'll
he
tell you
knew the
what,
situation when he rented the place, Michael.
I understand that, but I think in being there such a long time, I hardly ever noticed it.
Commissioner
so
Claffey.
Nothing else to say. Thank you.
The auto repair shop, does he own the building or lease the space there his business is located?
I believe he's the owner, the building owner.
Okay.
Commissioner Payne.
I wish, maybe you could help us, Mr. Planner. The conservation easement doesn't appear to go all the way to the road, and then there's a,
No, it does, unfortunately.
well, not on that map, it doesn't.
I know. We looked into that,
Well,
unfortunately.
on both sides of the road, it goes all the way in.
On both sides.
Because I noticed there's the paved area, and then there's about 10 feet of.
Tell me what you're talking about. You mean the driveway?
The paved driveway.
Okay, right, the driveway.
And then I noticed on both sides, or at least on the right-hand side, on the side that we're talking about, at least 10 feet of decorative stone along that roadway. And I'm wondering why it can't be 3 feet off the pavement, a little sign there on a small 4-inch by 4-inch post there. And maybe technically it might be in the Conservation Commission thing, but I'm wondering maybe it would be better to try to convince them that that is less of an impact than the sign on the tree. And I think maybe that would be the avenue to go.
Right, we can look into that.
The tree is showing business growth.
We can look into that.
Okay.
Mr. Sobieski.
I'm not in favor of signs on trees, and I kind of think that what Commissioner Payne just suggested might be an alternative. Either that or try to have him deal with the person that owns the sign on the other side. Come some type of financial agreement or something, put the sign back up there.
Commissioner Woods.
Well, how I understand it, the problem with where the sign was is not on the property, so our regulations won't allow it. You got to give this guy some credit. It was a little bit ingenious. Now, I'm not saying that we're happy about what he did, but I would agree completely with Commissioner Payne. I think that if it has to go back to the Conservation Commission to allow them to put maybe a 4x4 post in the ground and hang the sign, and then it can be regulated and you can have some control over it.
Commissioner Claffey.
Planner Minor, is the amount of signage that's on the building now that he occupies, has that been calculated to know if he's maximized that size based on, he is so far off the street. If he's trying to win 2 signs and he hasn't maximized his allowable signage on his face of his building, I mean, has he, or are they all fully maxed out with the size of their signs? Like, because this happens on the Berlin Turnpike, because a lot of businesses are set back off on the side of a building, even though it has a Berlin address or Berlin Turnpike address. And we've sat through many sign designs that they've maximized that space, and they still have some issues with sight lines and people seeing their businesses. I mean, has he offered that he has made the sign as big as he can on his building to try to rectify his distance from the street?
Apparently he hasn't, because he has enough to hang the sign off the tree, and the zoning enforcement officer determined that it was within the square footage, so he didn't maximize it, he went and put the sign on the tree.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Correct.
No, I just wanted to know.
Do you have an opinion on?
No, I mean, I've seen the building, and I've seen
Do you
various
have an
sizes.
opinion on us allowing sign on a tree?
Cut the tree.
It's not allowed, in my opinion. It's not a piece of construction material. Well, it is a piece of construction material if you cut it down and mill it, but not in the context we're speaking of tonight.
Commissioner,
Those trees were planted a long time ago when it was all built. The trees could be trimmed back too, where you could better view. I'm looking at it here on Google, and if you drive by, the branches are low. You know, that's just.
What's your opinion?
That's my opinion. Yeah, I think he should
everybody has an
put a
opinion.
bigger sign on his building.
Commissioner Payne.
I don't see anywhere in our regulations where it states that you can put a sign on a tree, and I would not like to continue that. I think that the planner and the zoning enforcement officer had good intent and trying to help the business, but I think that it was wrong to go on the tree, and I think that we could come up with another solution.
Okay. Can you talk to Mike, and see if we could, or whoever you got to talk to at the conservation, and see if we could get them to put it on their agenda and have a report from us, basically what we talked about, asking them to, so that we could eliminate the sign from the tree and put a post in the, yeah.
Yep, okay, yes, I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
Mr. Chairman, you want me to finish my report from CROG now?
Did you start it?
I only started
When?
When? Really?
when I was questioning the walkway, the bikeway.
Oh, that was, we didn't know that. Sorry.
Under communications, yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the meeting there was like they were doing a complete streetscape, like New Britain has gotten quite a few grants from the state for that. And as I was alluding to with the bikeway that both Councilwoman Pedreco and myself sat on that committee, there is a way to put one through town without getting on the major throughways. All right, with just signing and no widening of the roads, no restriping or anything like that. The other issue, and I did bring this up to them too, is we're looking to get an answer on a railroad station up in the Newington Junction. We haven't gotten anything from them, and they were going to look at that and see what's going on. I know that the funding is done basically on how much of the design work of the station is being done at the present time. Newington falls in with the stations of Flatbush Avenue and the redesign of the Windsor one, and I can't remember if Windsor Locks and Enfield were that package or not. But as far as the double tracking goes, I believe that's pretty much done into the Hartford area now. You know, and there will be extended rail service. I think that starts sometime this year, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
All right, so they're going to have to do something there sooner or later. With regard,
Finish.
okay, with regard to the complete streetscape, I would like to see the town get some type of money for that, whether it's planting along the side of the road or whatever. But as I alluded to them, they showed a picture of New Jersey where they had an intersection as big as our Cedar Street intersection, where they actually necked down a road to one lane in each direction, painted out the sides, and put picnic tables in. We could actually sit on the side of the road and eat if you wanted to. I kind of said to him, I says, that's not going to work up here no matter what you try. That's basically it. Thank you.
You got a comment?
Yeah, I thought I heard either the town planner or somewhere I read that they're going to start this without doing anything at Newington Junction and at least if they get the funding and finish the project, they're not really going to propose anything for the Newington Junction yet, is what I heard.
Right, yeah, then the governor announced 2 days ago that all funding of the entire Hartford line is now on hold, all of it. But what if the service starts as expected, it would just go straight through Newington. It wouldn't stop for the time being until we get a station.
Right.
Any other?
Yeah. That's how I understand it. They do have a contract now with a rail company. They're going to run it. They won't be able to stop in Newington or any of the stations until they get the funding to complete it.
Without the high-level platforms, yeah.
And that process is 24 to 36 months from the time they start construction before one of the stations is done.
So basically, they'll have you'll be able to get on and go from New Haven to Springfield without stopping.
No, the Berlin
it'll
station.
stop. Yeah, there are several.
Yeah, Berlin is done.
But I think Windsor Locks one of the Windsors is still under construction.
Berlin, Wallingford, and Meriden, the new
see.
ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other communications, Mr. Planner?
No.
Okay. Public participation? Anyone wishing to speak?
Gail Bedrico, 21 Isabel Terrace. Just the sign on the tree. I think one thing that kind of I was at the Conservation Committee meeting for something else, and I'm just curious how, if one commission denies something, how that denial, is there any communication or some kind of file, or, I mean, somebody, to me, I think should have been alerted to the fact that there was a denial in the first place, so the communication bothers me. Secondly, from what I understand, and is I believe the Conservation Commission, when they became aware of this, sent a letter to the business owner, but basically they have no teeth, because there's no fine. They don't have the ability to make any kind of fines, and there's no enforcement. And well, this is what was said at the conservation, and the reason that they said that also is because they don't have an appeals process. So if they did, have some kind of enforcement or fine, there's no way for the business owner or whoever to make an appeal, because there's not an appeals board. So that was part of the conversation. Maybe you could look into that as well. And then thirdly, if the decision is made to take the sign down from the tree, I hope that a tree warden or something is kind of like charged with it, because if somebody just comes and rips it out, the tree's not going to be, I mean, you're going to kill the tree, which is, anyways, that's my...
Part 2.
Rose Lyons, 46 Elton Drive. At the last meeting, members of the public were chastised for laughing and giggling, and if it's at inappropriate times, I apologize for that. But there are times when you're sitting around here having conversations, and I wish you would record some of the conversation, or you would record it at home and go home and listen to it. The tree comment just kind of got to us. It's been a long night, and Chairman Aida, if you could look at the planner instead of looking back at me, or I've got to find somebody to sit in front of me, because just one look about the tree and standards and stuff like that just threw me over the edge tonight. But once again, I apologize if anyone takes offense at it.
The planner isn't as good looking as you are, Rose.
And you're planning on putting a sign on me? Is that it? Thank you. Or maybe it's on my back.
Yeah, bullseye.
Kick me.
Any remarks by commissioners? Commissioner Fox.
Yeah, I think it was the end of last week. I had passed McDonald's a couple of times, and on that middle island that's, so controversial,
Yes,
there was a sign that said no left turn,
yeah.
which is all well and good. I took my granddaughter to McDonald's this afternoon, and it's already knocked down. It's off. This high above the ground. So even cones, Dominic, nothing's going to keep these people from making a left turn.
Mr. Chairman, the cones that I proposed are a specially designed plastic cone that's mounted, and they're made to hit and flex to the ground and then come back up. What was installed over there was not what I proposed. Thank you.
I understand. I'm not criticizing you. And that was a good idea, like I said. But they'll still be climbing over the island and, banging the signs as they go bing, 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 bing. But it's not going to stop them from making a left turn. I don't think, anyway.
Well, obviously, if they ran over a permanent type sign, what was it on the metal standard? Metal post? Commissioner Sobies.
Yeah, Commissioner Payne, didn't we not ask for something to be put when that design was put in? Remember, we pulled back the island and we wanted some stuff put on there to try to stop the left turn.
We mentioned that type of device, which if it got knocked over, if somebody did get over,
they're round pipes, they pop back up.
It would pop back up, okay, so that maybe it would prevent other people. Plus, it's designed to fall over on the ground so that if a big triaxle or a large truck for delivery goes in there, they can drive over it, know that they're knocking a sign down, but they're not going to do any permanent damage.
Correct.
And that's what we recommended to them with a couple other sign changes. But I think they did the sign, but they didn't do the type of device that we were talking about.
So they haven't finished the project?
Correct, they haven't finished. In fact, the CEO, I get CC'd these emails. The CEO has been in communication with the engineering firm that works for McDonald's, and they're trying to work out some solutions.
Okay, yeah, because I think what Commissioner Payne is saying is another safety issue. We might want to make sure it gets done. I wouldn't want to see that waived in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox brought up is kind of alarming. He put up a metal sign and they run right over it. A couple of days. There's got to be something that's. I thought we redesigned the island. There was a lot of things, but we say a lot of things in the meetings that don't get onto the plans, and they never become part of the site plan.
I thought when Commissioner Minor was here, they had modified the plans to do the islands. I haven't seen the island work at all yet.
They did. The problem, and it's never going to go away, is as long as McDonald's doesn't want to absolutely make it impossible for someone to make a left turn, for a bunch of good reasons, there will always be private citizens trying to make a left turn, even though it's only meant for an emergency vehicle or for a delivery truck. This problem will always be there. One thing that the engineering firm is going to talk to McDonald's about is somehow possibly move the sign that's on the highway. I guess there's a sign on the highway inviting McDonald's customers to turn onto Robbins. The sign's going to encourage them to go beyond Robbins and turn into the McDonald's directly from the Berlin Turnpike instead of using Robbins at all. So they're looking into other ways to try to deal with this issue. Not sure how successful that would be, though.
Any other commissioner remarks? Seeing none, motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Actually, I've done that.